Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. Today is July 9th, and I'll link below to the anniversary I posted about previously about a Honduran immigrant who bled to death after she went to a fake clinic in New York. But today I decided we're going to go to Shout Your Abortion again and read another happy abortion story. This one was posted just this past May 26th. 20 years old, 25 weeks along. Now remember, we're told that these post-viability abortions, because 25 is past viability, we're told that these post-viability abortions are only done for severe fetal anomalies or if the mother's life is in danger. That's what we're told. Let's listen to this story. Okay, so she found out she was pregnant. There was some drama in her family, and she decided to go for an appointment for an ultrasound. So I'm going to pick up here. I managed to get scheduled for the next day by some small miracle, so we set off to get the ultrasound. Rather than finding the gestational age to be between the 2 to 3 month window I thought might be possible, they instead told me that I was 25 weeks along, which put me past the legal gestational age to get an abortion in my home state of Connecticut. Because of that, I was offered two options: go to DC or go to the Bronx. New York was obviously the easy choice due to its proximity and the fact that the hospital in DC would have charged me to the tune of $10,000 for the care I needed. The care I needed. To take her viable unborn baby and kill it was the care she needed. Luckily, I was able to get scheduled for all of my appointments in the Bronx relatively easily, and all seemed well with the world. Now, I've always been a maternal person. I have a 3-year-old sister who I'm extremely close with and see as my own daughter. I even work at a summer camp every year because I just can't get enough of children. So as the week carried on and I waited for my appointments, I couldn't help but feel some combination of fear and elation every time I felt the baby kick or move around inside me. Maybe that elation was selfish, but for someone who only ever wanted to be a mom, it was heaven. She'd gone to a pro-life center. She would have been reassured that she could be a mom, a perfectly successful mom. They would have made sure she had support. Her family drama was a bit over the top, but again, they could have helped her work with that. However, I knew I had to be steadfast in my decision. Okay, so she's talking herself into this abortion. She wants the baby. While I was at school, I was drinking and smoking weed, as college kids do, and I knew I couldn't justify bringing a child into the world under those circumstances. Well, how about drinking less and smoking less weed? Beyond that, I still hadn't graduated, and 3 months was not going to be enough to prepare for a child. So although I began to feel love and trust between myself and my baby, I knew I still had to let it go. Again, she's referring to this as a baby. And again, if she had gone to a pro-life center, they would have helped her. They would have helped her set things up in those 3 months. This brings us to my first appointment, which was this past Wednesday. So I'm going to just go on. I was taken downstairs to have another ultrasound, during which I asked to see my baby and know the gender. It was a boy, and I still have the pictures. Okay. Next, I should probably mention I have a terrible fear of needles, and the next part of the process was an amniocentesis procedure that would stop the baby's heart. Coincidentally, when they did that, I felt my own heart shatter to a million pieces. Gone were the days of feeling him kick me, dance to music, or swim around like when he liked the food I was eating. Now I began to feel completely, utterly alone. Well, it's a little too late now, isn't it? So my second appointment was when things started to get a little crazy. I again made my way to the Bronx, accompanied by my dad, and everything was going smoothly. That day was the day I was to get the cervical dilators put in, and I handled the procedural part like a champ. However, I was also informed that my water had broken during the insertion process, and as time progressed, I began to feel so much pain that my vision became blurred. Why are they not controlling her pain? I couldn't eat or drink. All I wanted was to go home and lie down, but of course that was not to be. Instead, I had to make my way to another floor of the hospital for my pre-op information I needed for the next day. On my way out, I suddenly felt a gush of fluid running down my pants, and I knew my water had actually broken. So at the same time, the nurse handling my pre-op began to freak out and brought me upstairs to the labor and delivery floor. There, they said if I wasn't having contractions, there was nothing I could do, but they did manage to provide me with something to change into. However, this didn't stop me from leaking, so she talks about how the amniotic fluid is just leaking out of her as she goes home. After sleeping peacefully for a few hours, I suddenly jolted awake at 1 a.m. with a horrible pain in my abdomen. I was told that contractions were possible, but I had no idea what they felt like. However, I knew that whatever I was feeling was probably worth telling my parents about in case they were contractions. Oops. After I woke them up, we spent some time trying to figure out what this pain was that I was feeling. We came to the conclusion that they were likely contractions, so we followed the doctor's advice to head to the nearest emergency room. Why do they not have an arrangement for her to go to the hospital of that doctor and get care? Well, it's because she's traveling the whole way to the Bronx. Again, you know, the life of the mother. She is going back and forth between the Bronx and Connecticut. She is having an abortion as an outpatient, not in a hospital where when something happens, she can be taken care of. No, they're just, bye, deal with it on your own. If something goes wrong, just show up at the emergency room. That doesn't strike me as very caring. When we arrived, the waiting room was empty, and me and my dad were the only people at intake. I explained my situation and was unfortunately turned away. She doesn't say why. So we came home and resolved to leave earlier so that I might be able to be seen earlier. We departed via train at 5 a.m., me being already in labor for 4 hours at this point. I was miserable for those 2 hours on the train, vomiting publicly and painfully since I had nothing in my stomach. I was not allowed to eat or drink past midnight due to the procedure. By the time we made it to the hospital and the ambulatory surgery floor, I was in complete agony. I cried and begged for someone to help me because I was in so much pain and I couldn't continue sitting and waiting. They did end up letting me in, but I still needed to do my skin prep and change for the procedure, which was an added difficulty since I was so weak from the pain. I was freezing in the bathroom, my dad facing the wall as I wiped down my skin as instructed, and every movement felt like a Herculean effort. And then I was to change into hospital gowns and socks as well as a hairnet. Again, this simple task felt like the end of the world to me. This seems a little bizarre how they're handling this. They're handling it like a typical outpatient late abortion, but I don't know about changing into a hairnet. For the next hour or so, I remained in the pre-op room with my dad, and my labor only got worse, begging for an IV at the very least. Instead, I was told I needed more blood drawn to determine if I would need a blood transfusion, which pushed me over the edge. As the phlebotomist did her thing, I wailed and cried, not only from the labor pain or the pain of getting my blood drawn, but from the fear of all that was happening to me. Immediately after that blood draw, I was put into a wheelchair since I couldn't walk by myself from the contractions as they had intensified and gotten much closer together, and I was taken to another room to wait for my procedure. I laid there for I don't know how long, groaning in pain and struggling to get comfortable. My care team arrived and finally brought me into the operating room. I was put to sleep and the procedure carried on normally. So it seems like this was actually a dismemberment abortion rather than a labor and delivery abortion. Afterward, I woke up not even realizing what was going on, and I struggled to make all of the machines attached to me understand that I was breathing since my respiratory rate and blood pressure were so low. Then the cramping began. It wasn't as bad as the contractions, but I still couldn't get myself to eat more than a bite of a sandwich or drink more than a single sip of water, a single cup of water, which I drank very, very slowly. I was again in agony and feared this would be my situation for the rest of the day. Luckily, this time I was not made to sit and cry for long. I was given some Tylenol for pain, which worked like a charm. I slept amazingly on the way back home. Writing this now, though, I have kind of let it set in what happened, what my choice was, and how I feel about it. Honestly, I still don't feel good about it. All I can think is how if only I knew my baby was there, I could have prepared for him, meaning if she had known she was pregnant sooner. And I know in my heart that I would have really tried for him. I feel pain not only from the trauma of going through the procedure and everything preceding it, but from the loss of my baby and the loss of my ability to make another choice. So she's feeling that because she found out so late in the pregnancy, she wasn't able to prepare for the baby and therefore had to have the abortion. I know I did the right thing given the circumstances, but I wish I could have changed the circumstances for him, not the other way around. I know I can't beat myself up about it and that someday I will find peace, but for right now I miss him immensely and I am saddened by the thought that there may come a day that I don't anymore. Shout your abortion! What a happy abortion story. This sounds like a freaking nightmare. This woman needed a pro-life center so that she could have this baby that she was already bonding with. But she had been taught by the abortion lobby that women are pathetic and helpless and they just can't cope. And evidently, this young woman believed them.